selected the region's best newscast by a national panel of judges. You're watching 27 News First this morning on WKYT.
Look at your news at 5:06 this morning. 40 years after an historic civil rights march, several Americans make the journey again. How Kentuckians played a role. Well, they were marching for equal rights from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. 40 years later, that march was made again. And as Jay Buckner reports, some Kentuckians were among those remembering an event that changed the nation.
Ann Grundy has walked this road before. After the civil rights confrontation in 1965 that became known as Bloody Sunday, Grundy was in the midst of a racial firestorm. Joining other students and faculty from Berea College, Grundy participated in the Selma to Montgomery march to protest states' rights to impose voting restrictions. Now the director of the Bluegrass Aspendale Teen Center in Lexington, Grundy retraces her steps from 40 years ago.
This is the first time I have left St. Jude to walk these steps. So I'm doing what all self-respecting people do. I'm refueling.
4 decades ago, the protesters' singing was replaced by cries as state police troopers and sheriff's deputies attempted to disperse demonstrators by attacking them with nightsticks, bullwhips, and tear gas. 2 days later, the Reverend Martin Luther King led a second march before meeting a barricade of troopers on the Pettus Bridge. King turned back to avoid another bloody confrontation. With the assistance of law enforcement personnel, marchers make their way unimpeded all the way to the steps of the Capitol.
People looked at us 40 years ago in some of this neighborhood like, my God, it looks like the whole country came to help us. Of course, some didn't give us that reaction.
These marchers remember the protesters who stood their ground during a time of tense and sometimes deadly racial hostility. They also celebrate the success of their efforts 40 years ago, which compelled then-President Lyndon Johnson to sign the Voting Rights Act. But marchers say the struggle isn't over, that there is still much work to be done to harmonize racial tensions.
40 years ago, this is what the people fought for, and this is what we're doing today. We're still fighting. Injustice is still out there.
On the 40th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March, Grundy again marches behind Berea College's banner, along with 24 students who say they will always be on the front lines fighting for social justice.